On the eve of the wedding, I discovered a spreadsheet on Sean's computer. It was filled with information about the girls he had dated. In my column, it said, obedient and proper, suitable for marriage. But in the column of his first love, it said, you are a bird. You should proudly fly far away. He said he would never marry her, because being his wife meant managing meals, supporting her husband, raising children, and serving his parents. He couldn't bear to let her suffer that. I didn't argue or make a scene. The next day, I went back to the TV station. Sean didn't know, I also had a form. It was an application to be transferred to Africa as a war correspondent. The person I truly loved was still there. I was going to find him. Chapter 1. You're going back to be a war correspondent? In the morning, the sudden exclamation echoed through the TV station. I handed over the transfer application form. Yes. I want to be stationed in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Lydia, the director, couldn't speak for a long while. You were indeed very suitable to be a war correspondent. Everyone saw that 3 years ago, but now you just got ready to marry. You're still officially on wedding leave. Going to such a dangerous place, will your husband agree? I paused for a moment. I'm not getting married. What? Under the director's shocked gaze, I said firmly, I'm not getting married anymore. Yesterday, Sean went out to buy wedding candies and asked me to send him the list of items from his computer. I opened the document named Wedding Plan, but what I found inside was his dating record. 6 girls, each with detailed notes on their height, appearance, and other information. Mine was on the very first page. Name, Lydia. Family background, no parents. Simple social connections. Personality, traditional wife type. Obedient and proper. No ambition. Notes, good at housework. Able to bear children. Finally, he highlighted a few words in yellow. Suitable for marriage. My heart sank instantly. After a pause of a few seconds, I continued flipping through. The other girls also had similar evaluations. Extravagant and wasteful. Not suitable. Lazy lifestyle habits. Not suitable. Has a younger brother. Not suitable. But the last form, other than the name and photo, it was completely empty. Only one line under notes said, you are a bird. You should proudly fly far away. Her name was Teresa. Chapter 2. I remembered that when finalizing the guest list, Sean hesitated over this name. He added it several times, then deleted it again. When I asked him why, he said she was traveling around the world and probably wouldn't come back for this. So, it turned out she was his first love. Sean's WeChat was still logged in on his computer. I found Teresa. Their chat history had been wiped clean, but her latest post said, damn it, the one I love is getting married. I'm going to smash the axle of his wedding car and crash the wedding. Sean replied beneath it, even if you try. It won't work. I won't marry you. Boo-hoo. So now you've really found your true love, right? What are you talking about? Humph. Forget it. With your feudal family, marrying you would mean serving your whole household. No way. My journey is toward the stars and the sea. I know. That's why I married the person they wanted me to marry. I couldn't bear to let you suffer like that. Chapter 3. Couldn't bear to? Hearing that word come from Sean's mouth was truly rare. Sean and I met through a blind date. He was young and promising, the youngest associate chief physician at a top-tier hospital, and also handsome. But because of his strict, traditional parents, he had never been able to marry. They were extremely controlling and demanded that their daughter-in-law be obedient, docile, attentive, and skilled at serving others. The first time I went home with Sean, his mother brought out a basin of water and asked me to wash her feet, and I was willing to endure all of this, because the first moment I saw Sean, I thought, for that face, I could do anything. We dated for 2 years. His parents were very satisfied with me, and he gradually grew used to a home that was always clean and tidy, always filled with hot soup and freshly cooked meals, clothes always ironed crisp and neat. But his attitude toward me remained lukewarm, until this year. On his birthday, I wanted to bake him a cake with my own hands, but the oven exploded while preheating. When he rushed to the hospital and saw my arms covered with shards of glass, for the first time, he lost his composure, holding my face with trembling hands, panic in his voice. You don't need to do these things for me, It's okay if you don't. But even then, he never said he couldn't bear to lose me. Later, he proposed. I thought perhaps he had a trace of true feeling, that he was willing to move forward with me. But in the end, it was just to satisfy his parents' wishes. Teresa was the one he cherished enough to let go. The moment I saw their conversation, I knew this relationship had to end. He was putting on a show for his parents, and I was putting on a show for myself. But no matter how well it's acted, a play is still just a play. Chapter 4. When I returned home from the TV station, I pulled a few camera bags from the back of the bookshelf. They were old memories I had buried away. The feel of the camera casing had already become unfamiliar. The batteries long dried out. While waiting for the charger to revive them, I slid the memory cards into my computer and opened those long dormant photos. The first photo, African women waiting on the street to receive cholera medicine. The second, a 5-year-old child soldier, no taller than his gun. The third, refugees in North Kivu province, living in broken tents. The smell of smoke and dust seemed to travel across time and space. My heart felt gripped by sharp claws. I leaned back in my chair, calming my racing pulse, letting out a self-mocking smile. I wondered if Sean saw these things. Would he still write, obedient and proper, in my column? Just then, my phone buzzed twice. It was a message from him. He sent the location of a restaurant, and I suddenly remembered. He had invited the bridesmaids and groomsmen for a small gathering tonight. I didn't have many friends or relatives, so they were all Sean's friends. But I knew clearly, this was just an excuse for a banquet. Because today, Teresa had returned to the country. Chapter 5. When I arrived at the restaurant, they had already ordered. Next to Sean sat Teresa. There was no seat for me. When Teresa saw me, she looked me up and down with interest. Then she directed me, "Go get a chair and sit anywhere you like." I sat at the farthest spot from them. During the whole time, Sean just watched indifferently. He didn't say a single word. Someone asked, "Teresa, we thought you wouldn't come back this time. Are you kidding? This is Sean's wedding. Even if I had to crawl, I'd come back just to see what kind of woman he picked." The group exchanged meaningful glances. "That's true. The two of you have quite a history." After that, they started asking Teresa about her travels. By the time the dishes arrived, she had already finished telling stories about catching yellowfin tuna in the Mediterranean, walking the Camino de Santiago in Portugal, and climbing Uluru in Australia. Everyone's eyes sparkled with admiration. "Teresa, you're a woman and you dared to go to so many places." "Humph. I'm not one of those women whose world is just husband, children, and housework. Brave people get to enjoy the world first." Chapter 6. As the wine flowed and the mood grew lively, she became the center of attention. Sean, sitting beside her, rarely spoke, but every so often, he turned to look at her, with eyes so gentle they seemed ready to overflow. I quietly finished half a cup of baijiu. The bitterness stung my tongue. Everything felt tasteless. Teresa was in the middle of a story about dealing with a con artist in Egypt. Suddenly, she turned and asked Sean, "Do you want to know how to say darling in Arabic?" Sean froze, then shook his head. "I'll teach you." Teresa leaned against his shoulder, blowing a breath into his ear. "Habibi." Sean helplessly pushed her upright, the tips of his ears turning pink. "Sit properly. Come on. Say it with me." Unable to resist Teresa's teasing, he sighed and gave in. "Habibi. Bingo. That's right, you are my Habibi." Then her eyes shifted suddenly, and she looked at me. "Have you ever been to Africa?" Chapter 7. Someone immediately sneered. "Does she look like it? Africa? She probably hasn't even left the province." Even Sean wore a mocking smile and shook his head. Teresa narrowed her eyes, her face full of triumph. "That's true. I asked the wrong person. What I should be asking her is which market nearby sells the cheapest vegetables, or which brand of toilet cleaner works best." Laughter burst out around the table. She turned her head away, moving on to another topic. I slowly clenched my fists. I thought, maybe I was a little drunk. Otherwise, why would I feel anger over such a clumsy provocation? "I've been there," I said softly. The table grew a little quieter. Teresa tilted her head. "What?" "I've been to Africa." For a moment, A flicker of surprise crossed her face, but it was quickly replaced by disdain. Oh, please. No need to be so vain. If you haven't. You haven't. Lying is bad, you'll get exposed easily. I'm not lying. Then tell me, where did you go? Kenya? Morocco? Or maybe South Africa? She lifted her chin, certain I couldn't answer. I stared at her. The Democratic Republic of Congo. Chapter 8. The air suddenly went quiet. Where? The Democratic Republic of Congo? Where even is that? You must be drunk. Making up things like that. Haha. Who in their right mind would go to such a poor and chaotic place? The fire in my chest grew stronger. But there were many people there besides me. Doctors Without Borders. UN peacekeepers. Aid workers. Were they all not normal people? I didn't just go. I stayed there for an entire year. I saw them fight wars over mineral resources. I visited Ebola treatment centers. I handed out food aid with UN staff. I even got shot. The room fell into dead silence. Everyone's jaws dropped. And one more thing. I swirled the wine in my glass. There are no yellowfin tuna in the Mediterranean. They prefer tropical waters. The Camino de Santiago doesn't start in Portugal, it runs from France to Spain, and Uluru has been closed to climbers since 2019. I narrowed my eyes. Teresa. Lying is bad. It's very easy to get exposed. Chapter 9. Her face went pale instantly. Everyone's confused. Uncertain gazes darted between the two of us. Teresa shot to her feet, fierce on the surface but trembling underneath. She's an orphan. How could she possibly have gone to those places? She's the one lying. I propped my chin on my hand and smiled. Then why don't you show everyone your photos? If you've traveled to so many places, you must have taken a few, right? You didn't, did you? She grew more flustered, turning to Sean. Sean, what's wrong with your fiancé? Isn't tonight supposed to be my welcome back dinner? How can you let her bully me like this? Forget it, if I'm so unwelcome. I'll just leave. She dabbed at her eyes and actually ran out. The room descended into chaos. Others hurriedly pushed Sean. Go after her, it's late at night. What if she gets lost? Sean's face darkened. He cast me a vicious glare and strode out. The others quickly left as well. Sis-in-law, we'll head out first. Someone muttered under their breath. How could she have the nerve to pick on Teresa? Doesn't she realize she's the one who stole her place like a cuckoo in another's nest? Jealous. Obviously, Teresa is prettier and more worldly. What does she have? She makes things hard for Teresa, and in the end it's still her husband chasing after her rival. Pathetic. Their mocking voices faded into the distance. The huge private room was suddenly empty except for me. I let out a silent, derisive laugh, poured myself another cup of wine, and drained it in one gulp. Chapter 10. The truth is, Teresa wasn't wrong, I really hadn't been to those places. But the reason I knew she was lying was because of my mother. I wasn't born without parents. My mother was an international news reporter, later stationed long-term in war zones. Back then, a woman working abroad while the man stayed home to raise children was considered outrageous. The neighbors constantly mocked me. Your mom doesn't want you anymore. I clenched my fists and fought them, fiercely defending my dignity as a child, only to be met with even harsher ridicule. When I was little, it was hard to see her even once, but she often sent letters, stamped from around the world. She described in detail her life abroad, always including photographs. The happiest thing in my childhood was sitting on my father's knee, listening to him read her letters, and sketching in my heart the image of that fearless, high-spirited journalist. She once told me, Lydia, most women's worlds are small, but the real world is vast. When you grow up, you must see it for yourself. Only when you've broadened your horizons will you know what you truly want. She was my eyes, even at an age when I had barely read any books. Through her, I caught a glimpse of the world, but when I was 5 years old, she died in the line of duty. She was killed for exposing the massacre of civilians during the Kosovo War. The newspaper only recovered her camera. Inside, along with the precious images she died to protect, was also a photo of me, taken at some unknown time. Back then, I didn't really understand what killed meant, but those who had always gossiped at our doorstep gloated. See? Women who love the spotlight never come to a good end. After that, I lost my mother, but I always remembered her words. To go, to see with my own eyes, to record the world myself. Only then would I know what I truly wanted. This afternoon, the oldest, most worn camera I dug out was hers. The alcohol burned hotter in my head, leaving me dizzy. I buried my face in my hands. Mom, I miss you so much. Chapter 11. The next morning, I was woken up by a headache, tearing my eyes open. I lay dazed for a while before realizing the ceiling above me was my own. I had no idea how I got home last night. I got up to pour a glass of warm water. Sean was sitting in the living room, his face dark. Is this how you act as the lady of the house? I had no intention of responding. I turned and headed toward the study, but the desk was empty. Hoarsely, I asked, "Where's my camera?" I gave it to Teresa. I spun around sharply. He folded his arms and smirked. "Didn't you tell her to take more photos?" My brain struggled to process the words coming out of Sean's mouth. He had actually given my mother's camera to Teresa? I suddenly hurled the glass to the floor, grabbed him by the collar. "How dare you touch my camera? How dare you?" Sean was startled. "Teresa is at the M Hotel." "What room?" 1103. I shoved him away and stormed out, driving straight to the hotel. I rushed up to the 11th floor and kicked the door hard. "Get out here!" After a moment, Teresa opened the door angrily. "What the hell is wrong with you this early in the morning?" I barged inside. Sure enough, the camera was sitting on the TV cabinet. I grabbed it, ready to leave, but Teresa pulled me back. "That's a gift from Sean, why should you take it away?" I turned and slapped her hard across the face. "This is mine. What right do you have to take it?" She was stunned, then screamed, "You dare hit me?" She clawed at me, sobbing and scratching. "You bitch! You've already stolen him, and now you want to steal the gift he gave me too?" In the struggle, the fragile camera strap snapped. She seized the body and slammed it to the floor. A deafening crash. My mind went blank. The camera shattered into pieces right before my eyes. Chapter 12. In Teresa's eyes shone a cruel satisfaction. "If I can't have it, neither can you." A tidal wave of despair and fury consumed me. I grabbed Teresa's head and slammed it against the wall with all my strength. Blood appeared instantly. She screamed, "Help! Murder!" The hotel door was yanked open. Sean rushed in. When he saw Teresa's bleeding face, his eyes bulged in rage. He shoved me against the wall. "Lydia, are you insane?" Behind him, Teresa trembled, clutching her forehead, her legs too weak to stand. "Sean, I'm so scared." I pushed him away and collapsed to the floor. With trembling hands, I tried in vain to piece the fragments together. Even when the shards cut my fingers, I didn't care. No matter how I tried, they wouldn't fit. Sean seized my hands. "Calm down. It's broken, it can't be fixed." I convulsed with silent sobs, tears streaming uncontrollably. He gritted his teeth. "It's just a busted camera. Buy another one." "Do you really need to go crazy like this?" I bit my lip until it bled. The taste of iron filled my mouth. A busted camera. That was my mother's only keepsake. And he dared call it nothing but a busted camera. I lifted my head, unable to suppress the hatred boiling inside me. I slapped Sean across the face. Blood from my fingertips smeared his cheek. "Sean, get out! Get out!" Under his horrified gaze, I tore off the engagement ring from my finger and flung it hard into the trash can. Chapter 13. I packed up all my belongings and returned to my hometown to visit my mother. I sat in front of her gravestone for an entire day. During that time, Sean called me countless times. I didn't answer. I blocked him. Sometimes, I felt utterly ashamed. If my mother saw what I'd become over the past few years, would she be disappointed? I had failed her expectations. I hadn't grown into a proud, brave, and strong woman. Instead, I had wasted 3 years by the side of a man who wasn't worth it. On the third day, as usual, I went to the cemetery, but this time, beside the gravestone, I suddenly found something unexpected. It was a pot of bird of paradise flowers. My heart started pounding wildly. That was my mother's favorite flower. Who had been here? I turned and ran to the cemetery office to ask. They told me that every few months, someone would send them. Then they gave me an address. I had an answer in my heart, but I didn't dare believe it. Following the address, I found a flower shop. From the shop owner, I learned that about 3 years ago, she had received an order. Someone requested that every 3 months, a pot of bird of paradise be placed in front of the grave of Madame Daichuyan. Since the client had paid for 3 years in advance, it had left a deep impression on her. My heart nearly leapt out of my throat. Do you know who this person is? The shop owner flipped through her records. His surname was Liu, Mr. Justin Liu. Chapter 14. But we haven't been able to reach him for a long time. There was once a supply issue, and we wanted to ask if we could send a different flower, but he never replied. Do you know him? The shop owner looked up at me, then suddenly her expression changed to panic. Miss, are you all right? I rubbed my swollen eyes and waved my hand. I'm fine. The shop owner was very kind. She handed me a pack of tissues and brewed me a cup of floral tea. Then she turned to tend to the flowers. I sat quietly in the shop for a long while. Finally, I picked out a bouquet of daisies, ready to leave. But when I went to pay, the shop owner suddenly stopped me. This bouquet is on the house. I was a little confused. She looked thoughtful, as if remembering something. Miss, I just recalled, Mr. Liu once said that one day, someone might come to ask about this order. If she came alone, please give her a bouquet of flowers, and tell her, keep moving forward. The starlight will light your path. Chapter 15. That day, I wept uncontrollably in front of my mother's grave. I never expected him to appear by my side in this way, and I never expected that even now, I would still rely on him for comfort. What kind of mental preparation had he gone through to leave such words with the shop owner? Only I understood what "if she comes alone" really meant. It meant he was no longer by my side. That evening, a colleague called me. Lydia, the flight has been booked for next week. For this trip, who do you want to name as the beneficiary of your life insurance? Your husband? I shook my head. Please write down Doctors Without Borders. Doctors Without Borders? Yes. Why would you choose that? I sniffled. Because he was a doctor with Doctors Without Borders, staggering out through the cemetery gates. I saw an unexpected figure. It was Sean. He looked unshaven, a bit worn out. When he saw me, he didn't speak, only handed me a box. Inside lay a camera, the same model as my mother's. The old one really couldn't be repaired. We locked eyes in silence. I didn't know how he had found me, nor how he had managed to track down this camera model released back in 1994. But the thing I truly cherished had already been shattered. Even if he brought me an identical replacement, what meaning would it have? Seeing I wouldn't take it, he pressed his forehead tiredly. Come back with me. The wedding is next week. The invitations have already been sent out. If you keep making trouble, it'll be impossible to smooth things over. Chapter 16. I found it ironic. In your eyes, I'm the one making trouble? He sighed and grabbed my hand. Lydia, I know you're acting this way because you love me, because you felt I was favoring her, giving her your things. But it's only because she demanded an apology from you. I saw that camera was old and worn out, so I gave it to her to stop her from pestering you. You humiliated her in front of so many people. How could I just stand by? A strange pity welled up inside me as I looked at him. Sean, I don't love you. He froze. Then his expression hardened. Stop lying. If you didn't love me, then why do you always look at me with those eyes? I gave a soft laugh, pulled back my hand, and lovingly touched his face one last time. What a pity! I'll never see this face again. As if realizing something, his expression shifted instantly. But before he could finish, his phone rang. It was Teresa calling. He hesitated for a few seconds, then picked up. On the other end, her voice was broken, lost. Sean, I'm leaving. I've caused you trouble this time. I'm sorry. It's just. I couldn't stop myself from being jealous of her. Teresa, where are you? Don't come. Go to her instead. She's the one you'll spend your life with. Sean's voice grew desperate. Teresa! The call disconnected. Sean shoved the box into my arms and ran off. I watched his figure vanish at the end of the street. I let out a cold laugh, raised my hand, and threw the camera into the trash can. I was leaving soon too. Useless things didn't need to be carried along. Chapter 17. The following week, I was endlessly busy, training my body, practicing languages, confirming story topics, contacting local guides. During this time, Sean kept texting me from different numbers. Lydia, what did you mean that day? Don't we still have things to talk about? About that night. I'll apologize on Teresa's behalf. Where are you now? I didn't reply to a single one. On the day before I left, he asked again, tomorrow is the wedding. You'll come, right? I snapped my SIM card in half, dragging my suitcase. I headed for the airport without looking back. As dawn spilled through the cabin windows, the plane took off. There was no direct flight from Beijing to Kinshasa, the capital of the Democratic Republic of Congo. I had to transfer in Cairo. The whole trip would take nearly 20 hours, long enough for me to revisit old memories. I pulled on the eye mask the flight attendant had given me, and whispered softly, Justin, I'm coming back. I miss you so much. Chapter 18. I first met Justin in a refugee camp in Goma. At that time, the situation in eastern DRC was extremely chaotic. Armed groups, fighting over mineral resources and ethnic conflicts, were attacking villages. Hundreds of thousands of people were forced to abandon their homes and flee to larger cities. When I arrived at the camp, several doctors were treating a little girl. She had been caught in an explosion, and a small stone was lodged in her ear. The girl kept struggling, making the doctors hesitant to try removing it. Then someone called out, Lou. An Asian man walked over. After checking her condition, he suddenly pulled out a deck of cards from his white coat and began performing a magic trick. The little girl was captivated, taking the chance. The doctor beside him quickly extracted the stone. With a clink, it dropped into the metal tray, and at that exact moment, the cards in his hands disappeared. In their place was an African violet. The little girl's eyes widened in awe. She tugged at his sleeves but found nothing else. Then she clapped happily, tugging on her parents' clothes, shouting with joy. The man handed her the flower, then ushered the grateful parents out of the tent. I lifted my camera and captured that strange, magical moment. The shutter's click made him turn his head. When he saw me, he looked surprised. He asked in French, Not many Asian faces around here. Where are you from? China, I answered. His face lit up, and he switched back to Chinese. He told me his name was Justin, a doctor with Doctors Without Borders stationed in Goma. Thinking back to what I'd just seen, I asked, Where did you get the flower? After all, flowers weren't common in a refugee camp. He looked a little smug. I grow them. Want to see? I followed him to his quarters. There, using salvaged foam boxes, plastic bottles, and broken tiles, he had created a small garden. African violets, agapanthus, tropical orchids, Congolese rhododendrons. I was puzzled. Why do you plant these? He propped a leg on the table, speaking as if it were obvious. Because flowers make people happy. I frowned slightly, but he just laughed. I know what you're thinking. You think food, clean water, medicine are far more urgent to them, and flowers are useless, right? I nodded. He said, Here, everything pushes people to forget beauty, but happiness reminds them they're still alive, still worthy of expectation, and where there's expectation, there's hope. The corners of his lips curled up. He winked at me. So flowers matter too. A chord deep inside me was gently struck. I looked at this overly optimistic, passionate, yet carefree man, and for a moment, I couldn't look away. Chapter 19. In the entire refugee camp, only Justin and I were fellow Chinese. So, naturally, we became allies. Contrary to my first impression, Justin was actually extremely serious about his work. He provided me with detailed information, casualty numbers, shortages of supplies, and I wove those numbers and stories into reports to be published. My very first report secured nearly 1,000 tons of food donations for the local people. At that time, Justin had noticed an abnormally high AIDS mortality rate in the camp. We've been distributing antiretroviral drugs, but they're still dying in groups. That doesn't make sense, unless they weren't taking the medicine at all. I flipped through the patient's records and said, then I'll investigate. I went around interviewing people and eventually discovered that not only antiretrovirals, but almost all free distributed medicine was ending up on the black market. Drug dealers could trade a bag of moldy cornmeal for those life-saving pills, because that meant a month's worth of food for a family. When the report was published, it caused a huge stir in international media. The UN World Food Programme quickly mobilized resources. On the day the aid convoy arrived, cheers erupted in the camp like never before. Justin and I helped distribute the rations, sweating through our clothes but feeling deeply gratified. After handing the last sack of potatoes to a mother holding her baby, Justin and I collapsed against the side of a truck. He turned his head to look at me. A smile lit up his face, making his handsome features glow even brighter. Lydia, thank you. Thank me for what? Before you came, I could only watch helplessly as they suffered, unable to do much. But now, through you, I've found my purpose. You showed the world both them and us. In that moment, my heart pounded wildly. I could barely breathe. Flustered, I tucked my hair behind my ear, trying to hide the burning red spreading there. Chapter 20. From then on, we quickly grew close. Justin was well-liked. His medical skills were exceptional, and in critical moments he was utterly reliable. At the same time, he was witty, always making others laugh. I loved being around him. When he was present, even my interview subjects were willing to say a little more. One day, I followed him as he sprayed disinfectant against cholera in the camp. Suddenly, a cry for help came from an empty tent. Pulling back the flap, I saw a man pinning down a girl, tearing at her clothes. My face froze. I rushed forward and shoved him off. He cursed and raised his fist. Justin yanked me behind him, holding up the badge on his chest. If you don't want to find yourself without medical care in the future, you'd better leave now. The man glanced at the red cross on it, swearing under his breath. He pulled up his pants and fled. We brought the girl to the UNHCR office, asking them to reassign her to another tent. After everything was settled, Justin patted my shoulder. Don't be upset. You did very well. I blinked. I'm not upset. I already knew violence and crime were common companions to refugee camps. But he tilted his head. Still, you look upset. I froze. Lifting my hand, I touched my own face. He suddenly laughed, then reached out and pinched my cheeks hard. A person's feelings are always written on their face. Chapter 21. It was like he had found a new pastime. After that, every time we met, he would observe me for a few seconds, then say things like, "Good mood today?" Or, "Who upset you?" I couldn't help but find it both helpless and funny. Finally, I asked, "How exactly do you tell?" He rested his hands behind his head. "I have a younger brother. In some ways, you two are alike. You both like to hide your emotions." The mention of family made me fall silent. "Don't your family worry about you being here?" He shook his head calmly. "We cut ties." "What? Why?" I was shocked. "Because I refused to obey them. Their control was terrifying. Since I was little, they forced me to do this and that. If I dared to argue, I was beaten. I followed their wishes, studied medicine, worked at a hospital, but they still weren't satisfied, pushing me to climb higher, to bring them glory. I didn't want that anymore. I just wanted to do something pure. With Doctors Without Borders, I returned to the essence of being a doctor, saving lives. I liked that." He sighed. "Honestly, I still feel guilty about my brother. When I resisted their control, they had another child as a backup in case I failed. After I left, he was forced onto the same path as me. He's obedient, but I know he's also suffocating. I heard he once fell in love with a free-spirited girl, but they broke it up. It was the first time he had ever spoken about his family, and I hadn't expected it to be so heartbreaking." We sat in silence for a while. Then he asked, "What about you? Why did you come here to be a war correspondent? Didn't your family worry about you?" Chapter 22. Perhaps because he had first shared his family story so honestly, I felt it wasn't as hard to speak. I hesitated, then said, "My mother passed away, and my father, like yours, cut ties with me. The year my mother's funeral was held, Many people came. A sea of black. The host delivered a long eulogy. I couldn't understand all of it, and my mind drifted. A butterfly flew into the hall, landing on my mother's portrait. Its wings fluttered, making the photo seem alive. I thought my mother was smiling at me, so I smiled back. The next moment, my father slapped me to the ground. He roared, "Your mother just died. How can you still smile?" Everyone stared at me like I was a monster. I burst into tears. He slapped me again. I haven't even cried. So what are you crying for? Cry again, and I'll throw you out. I'll disown you. In that moment, I was terrified. Tears burned in my eyes, but I bit my lip and didn't dare make a sound. During the first year after my mother's death, my father often sat in the living room at night, looking through her letters and photos. By the second year, he boxed them up and shoved them in a dusty corner. By the third year, he remarried. The new woman wanted to burn the boxes in the yard. I clawed out my mother's camera, holding it to my chest as the flames burned me. From then on, the camera was all I had left of her. Later, my half-sister was born. All the love and attention in the family went to her. I grew up like a ghost until I was 18, when I went to university to study journalism. My father handed me a thick wad of cash. "You're grown. Don't come back again." There was 30,000 yuan. That was the price to sever our blood ties. At university, my professors and classmates said I was well suited to be a reporter, because no matter what happened, my expression never changed. After I became a war correspondent, this became my strength. They admired my composure, but only I knew I wasn't brave. Deep down, I thought, if only I hadn't angered my father in the funeral hall, maybe he wouldn't have abandoned me. So I learned to suppress all my emotions. I didn't dare to laugh too freely or cry too hard, for fear of losing something else. As I finished, I let out a long breath. This was the first time I had ever spoken these words aloud. Justin's brows furrowed deeply. The smile that always lingered on his lips was gone. His voice was serious. "Lydia, did you forget you were only 5 years old?" I stared blankly. "What?" Crying and laughing loudly, that's a child's right. The only reason you suppress yourself so hard is because you were never allowed to be a child. Chapter 23. I froze. It felt like my head had been struck with a heavy club. So, was that really it? After the funeral, my father didn't speak to me for a long time. Later, when my younger sister was born, my needs were always put after hers. When I went to university, I had to study and also support myself. It seemed there had never really been a time when I was treated like a child. Because there was no one to rely on, I knew my laughter and my tears would never get a response, so I might as well keep them hidden inside. I lowered my head, tasting bitterness. Yes, but now I've already grown up. There's no way I can laugh or cry freely like a child anymore. Suddenly, something jolted through my ribs like a spark of electricity. A tingling sensation shot up my side. Startled, I let out a strange yelp. I turned to look. It was Justin. He had poked me in the waist. He curved his lips into a playful smile. "Who said it's impossible?" I tried desperately to back away, but he caught me. It was like there was a switch on my side. Even though I clenched my mouth with all my might, I still burst into uncontrollable laughter, like air leaking from a balloon. "Stop. Don't poke me. It tickles. Ah ha 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 ha. I beg you." I wriggled free, only to be pushed back into the corner by him. I laughed so hard tears sprang from my eyes. I pleaded in a pitiful voice, "Spare me. Dr. Lou." He bared his teeth in a grin, reaching his hand toward me again like a devil's claw. I curled up tightly, but then realized nothing happened. No tingling this time. Peeking through the crack of one eye, I saw him holding out his palm. In it lay a piece of candy, with a smiling gaze. He said, "Here, a reward for the little kid." I was stunned for a long while. Then I collapsed weakly to the ground. Unwrapping the candy, I stuffed it into my mouth. It didn't taste good. The cheap artificial fruit flavor spread, cloyingly sweet, yet it burned my eyes hot with tears. Justin bent down, pulling me up into his arms. "Go ahead, cry. It's okay. I know you've been hurting." That warm, steady embrace shattered the last of my defenses. How long had it been since I last felt understood, valued? So long I had believed I didn't deserve it. Yet here, in this faraway land across half the globe, he comforted me like a child, with nothing but a piece of fruit candy. I couldn't hold back anymore. The tears I had swallowed when I was 5 years old finally poured out. 2 decades late, he gently patted my back the whole time, letting my sobs soak through his shirt, until at some point, I cried myself to sleep in his arms. Chapter 24. The next morning when I woke, my eyes were swollen like walnuts, and I was clinging to Justin like an octopus. Remembering last night, I froze, then immediately tried to roll away, but his arm caught me. "Where are you running?" I buried my face in the blanket, mumbling incoherently. He, however, acted as if nothing had happened. "Are you shy? What's there to be embarrassed about?" He tugged me out from under the blanket, smiling brightly. He said, "From now on, laugh when you want to laugh, cry when you want to cry. If anyone says otherwise, I'll beat them up for you." I shook my head frantically. He raised a brow. "Didn't you get it?" I blinked in confusion. "Lydia, I'm confessing to you." "What?" He looked at me with a teasing grin. "Be my little kid for life, okay?" My heart felt like it was about to crash through the window and fly into the stratosphere. I was completely stunned. He stood, pulling open the curtains. Sunlight flooded into the room, chasing away all the darkness in an instant. Bathed in that glowing light, he reached his hand out to me. "Oh, and I forgot to say yesterday, your mom was really cool. When we go back home, let's visit her together." My head spun. I thought, how could he be like this? He had just confessed, and he was already talking about meeting my family? But the warmth of his hand spread steadily into mine. Dazed, choking up, I couldn't bring myself to refuse. I could only whisper, "Okay." He pulled me into his arms, full of joy. In that moment, I silently made a devout wish to the heavens, that my time with him could last a little longer. Just a little longer, even if this was only a dream. I hoped never to wake from it. Chapter 25. Justin and I started dating, but because of work, we didn't get to see each other often in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Most of the time, we only met in conflict zones. He would be rushing to save the wounded, while I was desperately filming and gathering materials for reports. The fleeting touch of our hands as we brushed past each other, that was our only form of communication, and the internet connection was unstable at best. Often, we wouldn't hear from each other for days. Then suddenly, a flood of messages would crash into our phones, dinging non-stop, all out of order, as if they too had just survived a hail of gunfire, carrying heavy longing, yet stubbornly delivering our hearts to each other. But the situation in North Kivu was dire. The first time we argued was on the day a village near Goma was attacked. When we arrived, the armed militants hadn't completely withdrawn. Security forces clashed with them. We hurried back to the vehicle, ready to retreat. But then I saw Justin dart out of the ambulance again. On the edge of the firefight, a villager had fallen. He carried the man back, his own body streaked with blood from shrapnel cuts. I was furious and terrified, and we had a huge fight, but he refused to back down. "I'm a doctor. I can't just watch someone die." He'd only been shot in the leg, he still had a chance to live. But if I left him there, in the crossfire, he would have been doomed. I knew he was right. I knew saving lives was his mission. But I was so scared. When he came back, he was covered in blood. I couldn't even tell whose blood it was. My hands shook as I checked him over and finally realized it was just superficial wounds. All of a sudden, I didn't want to argue anymore. I threw my arms around him and sobbed. "Justin, I don't want to lose anyone ever again. If something happened to you, what would I do?" He grew quiet. After a moment, he hugged me back, his voice hoarse. "I'm sorry. From now on, I'll be careful. I won't risk my life. I won't make you worry." I buried my face in his chest, sniffling. "Promise?" "Then let's pinky swear." He took my hand and hooked it with his, chanting, "Pinky swear. Hang it high. 100 years without change, whoever breaks it turns into a puppy." I really can't turn into a puppy, can I? Otherwise, when I meet your mom someday, how would you introduce me? "This is my puppy boyfriend?" Through my tears. He actually made me laugh. I shoved a pillow into his face, but he just lay there motionless. Panicked. I yanked it away, afraid I'd smothered him. He was staring back mischievously, perfectly fine, as if to say, see? Not that easy to kill me. All I could do was glare at him until my eyes stung, and tears welled up again. My heart sank, because we both knew. A pinky swear was just psychological comfort. The battlefield was the cruelest place of all. For the first time, I truly understood. Every single day I had with Justin was immeasurably precious, because no one could ever say for certain whether death or tomorrow would come first. Chapter 26. As the war grew more frequent, Ebola also began ravaging this already battered country. By spring, Justin became even busier because of the severe shortage of medical staff. He had to run back and forth between the refugee camp and the Ebola treatment center. But then, armed groups suddenly launched attacks on treatment centers in several cities. Many doctors were forced to give up their work and evacuate immediately, but Justin refused to leave. On the one hand, the situation in Goma was still relatively stable. On the other hand, the center still had nearly 100 patients. If everyone left, they would be left lying in their beds, waiting to die. So he and 4 other doctors stayed behind, adapting as best they could. But it wasn't long before armed groups occupied the outskirts of Goma, cutting off the roads in and out. We were trapped. In such a situation, Justin suddenly sent me a message, asking me to come to the treatment center. He was vague, but I had a bad feeling. We put on protective suits and entered the medical waste disposal area. In a room that had been cleared out, I saw more than a dozen Hutu children. They had escaped from the mountains. The oldest was only 12. Their clothes were ragged, their bodies covered in already infected wounds. I could hardly believe my eyes, because the armed groups occupying the outskirts were Tutsi, and between the Tutsi and the Hutu, there was a blood feud. If these children were discovered, the entire treatment center could be destroyed. I was overwhelmed. Justin, are you out of your mind? Do you remember the principles of Doctors Without Borders? He wasn't supposed to intervene directly in a war conflict. That was the only way to maximize the help he could give to others. But he just lowered his head. I know this is dangerous. That's why I just wanted to ask you if you could contact some organization that could take them in. But with so many kids, how can you get them out of Goma? The streets are full of patrols. Justin spoke quickly. They're small. They can put on protective suits and hide inside medical waste bins. The transport trucks come every 3 days. Nobody will open those bins. As long as someone is ready to receive them afterward, we can save them. I was stunned by the boldness of his plan. He clenched his fists. Lydia, I'm a human being first, a doctor second, and only after that a member of Doctors Without Borders. I can't just throw them out to die. Chapter 27. My head throbbed with pain. Reason and emotion were locked in a furious struggle. And those children, watching us argue fiercely, all wore expressions of despair. The youngest ones huddled tightly together, fingers interlocked in a death grip, as if waiting for the final verdict of fate. I softened almost instantly. They had already given everything they had to escape from hell. We couldn't possibly send them back again. Taking deep breaths, I forced myself to calm down. I'll help you, but I won't just help you contact someone to receive them. I'll stay here and personally make sure they all get out. Justin froze, then immediately refused. No, it's too dangerous. So what? I should just let you face the danger alone? If you don't agree, I'll go out right now and tell them there are Hutu children hiding here. He ground his teeth in frustration. I never should have involved you. Too late. You already did. Justin turned his anger on himself. Refusing to look at me, I sighed, wrapped my arms around his neck, and forced him to meet my eyes. At least in the worst case, we can die together. He snapped. Furious. Don't say that. Absolutely not. Through the clear visor of the protective mask, I touched his face. Yes, of course. After all, you promised me. We still have to go back and visit Mom. Chapter 28. I had to admit, Justin's plan was almost flawless. Nobody would ever want to touch the medical waste from Ebola patients. Even less would anyone imagine that there were people hidden inside. Each time, We could smuggle out 2 children. Along the way, the transport truck would stop once, where members of a humanitarian organization would transfer the children. Half a month later, only 2 of that group of children were left. They were the oldest, a brother and sister. The brother was named Ariel, the sister Mary. On the day the truck was scheduled to take them away, Justin was in high spirits. Once again, he said to me, "Thank you, Lydia." I didn't respond, just gripped his hand tightly. We could almost see the dawn of victory. We even began to celebrate ahead of time. The 2 children performed the Hutu ethnic dance in Gambela for us. Justin cooked them a meal that was nothing short of a feast, and I took many photos of them. When night fell, they began putting on protective suits. Mary handed me a marker and asked, "Can you write your names on them?" Justin and I were both surprised, but we signed anyway. I thought for a moment, then added, "I hope you can grow up well." Justin wrote, "I hope you can reunite with your family." I added, "I hope the war ends soon." Justin wrote, "I hope we can meet again in the future." We covered the protective suits with blessings. By the end, everyone was in tears. The children threw themselves into our arms. Their muffled voices came from under the suits. "We will remember you forever and ever. Thank you, you are our great heroes." Chapter 29. In the middle of the night, the transport truck pulled into the center. As usual, we loaded the children into the garbage bins and placed them onto the truck. But just after everything was done, gunfire suddenly rang out in the main hall of the center. Justin and I turned pale and sprinted over. Armed men had broken in, saying they'd received a tip that Hutu children were being hidden here. Justin went forward to negotiate, cooperating with them calmly and without fear. I watched as those men kicked doors open violently, rummaging through every corner of every room. My nerves were so tight I almost vomited. They searched everywhere but found nothing. After threatening us with a few harsh words, they were about to leave. But suddenly, someone shouted from outside. He said he had seen the transport truck that had just left. The men immediately cursed and rushed out. The last one out of the hall, shouting in fury, hurled a grenade inside. Life and death, just a single instant. In my eyes, everything stretched into slow motion. I could see the bomb tracing its arc, falling slowly through the air. I could see the other doctors' faces, horrified, panicked, out of control. I could see Justin, face twisted, sprinting toward me. At the very last moment before the explosion, he knocked me down to the floor, shielding me beneath him. He covered my ears with his hands. Chapter 30. Then, in an instant, time snapped back into place. It felt as if a scorching giant hand had slammed me to the ground. I coughed up a mouthful of blood. My organs felt displaced. Thick smoke billowed all around, making it impossible to see anything. Something warm and wet was streaming down my face. When I touched it, my entire palm was covered in blood. Justin had been blown away by the blast. He lay sprawled on the ground, not far from me. I tried to stand up, but couldn't even stay on my feet. I could only crawl on my knees, trembling hands reaching to check his breath. Thank God, he wasn't dead. Gunfire erupted again from somewhere nearby. Desperately, I heaved him onto my back and staggered toward an escape, but everywhere were men with guns. I quickly turned and fled deeper into the forest. I don't know how long I ran. My legs gradually went numb until I couldn't feel them anymore. At last, I collapsed onto the ground. That was when Justin woke up. He struggled to sit up, trying to help me, but his body refused to move. Weakly, he said, "Lydia, you go on without me." I couldn't stop sobbing, forcing myself back up with fury. "I won't. If we go together." He grabbed my ankle. "You go first. Find help. Come back for me. Both of us, we won't make it." I broke down, crying uncontrollably. "Justin, we made a pinky promise. You can't lie to me. If you die, I'll never forgive you. Not even as a ghost." He gave a faint laugh, only to choke on blood and cough violently. Cough, cough. "I'm not lying. The one who lies is a little dog." With great effort, I propped him against a tree. Tears streamed endlessly down my face. He gently squeezed my hand. "Go, hurry. You won't let me die, will you? Frantically wiping my tears, I said, you must wait for me. I'll come back for you. You'll be all right. He smiled and waved his hand weakly. Okay. Chapter 31. I turned around, ready to keep running. The very next second, a gunshot thundered behind me. Someone slammed me to the ground. A tremendous force struck my shoulder. The agony stole my breath away. I'd been shot. Horrified, I turned my head. Justin had fallen onto me. On his chest was a gaping wound. His white coat completely drenched in red. Blood pouring uncontrollably from his mouth. My mind went blank, ignoring my own wound. I fought through the pain and rolled him over. Justin! Justin! I pressed against his wound in vain, lost and panicked. Stop the bleeding. We need to stop the bleeding first. But he weakly caught my hand. That simple gesture seemed to cost him everything. With slurred words, he whispered, I'm sorry. I love you. In the next life, will you be my little one again? In his eyes, emotions swirled together. Reluctance, tenderness, resignation, until, finally, all light faded. His hand slipped lifelessly from mine. I froze. A massive wave of disorientation and terror crashed over me. It felt as though my heart was burning alive. I vomited another mouthful of blood. My vision blurred. Cold sweat poured from me. The adrenaline wore off, and the agony in my shoulder exploded into stars before my eyes. I still tried to reach for him, still felt crushing fear at the suddenness of death. I called out, brokenly, Justin, but my body had reached its limit. I toppled backward, and everything went black. Chapter 32. When I woke up again, the faint smell of disinfectant lingered at the tip of my nose. I had already been transferred to a hospital back home. The doctors told me I had stayed in the ICU for 2 whole weeks. Severe internal injuries. A gunshot wound to my shoulder. But in all that misfortune, there was still some luck. My spleen hadn't ruptured, and the bullet hadn't gone all the way through. The blood loss wasn't too serious. That was the only reason I lived long enough to be rescued by the peacekeeping forces. I knew very well it was because Justin had shielded me twice. He had saved my life. I asked every single person I could reach about his whereabouts, but they all told me the same thing. The chaos was too overwhelming. Justin's body had never been found, and because the casualties kept climbing, Doctors Without Borders had suspended its projects in North Kivu. There was no one left who could help me search for him. Just like that, Justin vanished. Night after night, I woke up screaming, seized by panic attacks. My mind replayed his final moments over and over. The doctors diagnosed me with PTSD. I started taking medication, doing therapy, even drinking heavily. But nothing worked. Everyone told me to try living a new life, to stop clinging to the past, to move on. But how could I? He had died for me. That thought haunted me endlessly. It made me hate myself for still being alive. Hate that it wasn't me who had died. Hate that this world couldn't give him the ending he deserved. Countless times, I stood on rooftops, ready to follow him. Yet at the last second, I always pulled myself back. This life was the one Justin had given everything to save. I had long lost the right to throw it away. I took a 6-month medical leave. When I returned to the TV station, I couldn't face cameras or photographs anymore. So I requested a transfer to work behind the scenes. But as days passed, I still lived like a walking corpse. Empty, lifeless. My colleagues couldn't stand it anymore. They wanted me to meet new people. So they dragged me out on blind dates. I had no interest, only wanted to brush it off and leave. But then, I met Sean. When I saw that face, identical to Justin's, I froze. It took everything I had not to break down crying on the spot. Later I found out, he was the younger brother Justin had once mentioned. Finding a stand-in like this, at first, it really did feel like comfort. Those ordinary days. So peaceful, so tempting. If he came home late, I could cook dinner and wait for him. On weekends, we could curl up on the sofa and watch movies together. Every time I woke from nightmares, seeing him still quietly asleep beside me, let me fall back into rest. It was everything Justin and I had once been denied. I drowned in it, unable to pull myself out. I almost convinced myself to. Wouldn't it be nice to just treat him as Justin and live out an ordinary life together? But dreams always end. In the end, they were not the same person. Justin would have gone home with me to see Mom. How could he have ever given her camera away? Justin had risked his life to protect me. How could he ever allow others to humiliate me? Justin had said he found meaning in me. How could he ever see me as nothing more than a weak, sheltered woman trapped by family burdens? I regretted it. His body was barely cold. Yet I ran for reality, living a delusional life with his shadow. How could I do that to him? So I had to leave. Even if I wasn't ready to face everything, I had to go find him. I should have gone long ago. I will go back myself and bring him back. Chapter 33. Back at the Goma refugee camp, I met Justin's colleagues. Now, Doctors Without Borders had returned. His former partner, Adam, had been promoted to coordinator of the entire Goma project. The first time we saw each other, not a word was spoken. The tears came first, after half an hour of crying in each other's arms. I told him I had come back to search for Justin. He took me to the storage room. Inside, there were still some of Justin's belongings. The evacuation was rushed back then. A lot of things were never sorted out. In that box, there was a deck of cards, a packet of flower seeds, a bunch of keys, several medical books, a stethoscope, just little things. Yet each one deeply tied to him. It felt as if I had gone back 3 years. One afternoon, pushing open the door to his dormitory, seeing him sitting on a chair, reading, twirling a pen in his fingers, he looked up, smiled at me, and said, "You're here." Adam too seemed wistful. These things should have been dealt with long ago, but I thought, maybe one day you would come back to gather them for him. So I kept them all this time. I didn't expect that day would really come. I accepted them solemnly. Adam, thank you. I was too late. After that, I told him I also wanted to look into the whereabouts of those children from back then. He promised to keep an eye out for me. Though after so many years, he warned me not to hold out too much hope. When everything was done, I returned to the dormitory. That was when I saw a message from my colleagues. They said Sean had come looking for me. Chapter 34. On the day of the wedding, I didn't show up. His parents were furious. He searched everywhere for me, until he asked my colleagues. Only then did he learn I had gone to the Congo. He refused to believe it. Stormed the TV station. Almost got himself taken away by the police. I sighed. I couldn't understand, since he already had someone else in his heart. Why should my presence matter to him at all? But not wanting to trouble my colleagues further, I made a video call to Sean. The moment the call connected, my breath caught. On screen, his whole appearance was disheveled. The light around him was dim, filled with smoke. On the ground, empty bottles lay scattered everywhere. "Lydia? Is it really you?" He stared blankly at me, rubbing his eyes again and again. Unbelievable. He suddenly gave a bitter laugh, burying his face in his hands. All this just because of a few words Teresa said. "You really stormed off to Africa over that? Are you out of your mind?" In an instant, anger flared inside me. I felt ridiculous for even contacting him. I was about to hang up, but then, through his fingers, huge drops of tears slipped down. "How could you treat your life like a joke? How could you make me worry about you like this?" I suddenly felt it absurd. "You worry about me? Our relationship started with you using me to appease your parents, and me using you as a substitute for comfort. Not a shred of genuine feeling." He roared and cut me off. The hell, it wasn't genuine. Do you have any idea? The night of that dinner, I went out to look for Teresa. But the whole time I couldn't stop thinking about you. Worrying how you'd get home after drinking so much. Your camera broke. I ran around the whole city's shops trying to find one. They all said it was too old. So I asked friends abroad. And when they found it, I flew there myself to bring it back for you. You vanished without a word. They said you went to Congo. I searched about this country online, panicking so much I couldn't sleep at night. You made me fall in love with you. then threw me away. How could you do that to me? His eyes were red. His expression like a stray dog left outside someone's door. Please, come back, will you? He pulled out the ring I had thrown away. His voice low and pleading, we can reschedule the wedding. I'll only ever marry you. We stared at each other for a long time. Finally, I suddenly smiled. Sean, you've never truly known me. So how can you talk about love? Who is Teresa to me? Who are you? Neither of you is worth my anger. I came back only because the one I love is here. His pupils shrank. In pain, he swept everything off the table. Who is he? Who the hell is he? I coldly hung up the call. You don't need to know. Chapter 35. I returned to journalism. After 3 years. The situation in the Democratic Republic of Congo was even worse than before. The areas under the control of armed groups had expanded to an unprecedented level. Food crises, cholera outbreaks, sexual violence, and kidnappings were everywhere. This place felt like a land forsaken by God. Every day I witnessed things that looked like hell itself. And I would think, was there really any meaning in what we were doing? For me, it felt like I was merely documenting a cycle of tragedies. The world saw the suffering here, but then what? And for Doctors Without Borders, was their medical aid truly prolonging hope? Or was it merely prolonging pain? No one could say for sure whether surviving in a place like this was a blessing or a curse. Months later, Adam told me he had found 5 of those children. Among them were Ariel and Mary. They had successfully escaped that day. Later, they reunited with relatives and were now living in a family home in Kisangani. That news was uplifting. I rushed to see them. As soon as the car reached our meeting point, Mary came running out. She threw herself into my arms, tears streaming down her face. Lydia, you finally came. She had grown taller, blossoming into a young girl. Anxiously, she looked into the car and asked me, "Where's the doctor? Why didn't he come with you?" I froze. "He's too busy." Mary immediately twisted her fingers tightly. Did something happen to him? Children who had faced death were especially sensitive to ambiguous answers like this. I shook my head firmly. "No, he's fine. Let me show you." I scrolled through my phone, but I realized I had no photos of Justin, because I couldn't bear to look at them. After returning home, I had sealed them all away in my computer. In the end, I only found a photo of Sean. He was wearing a white coat, reading a patient's chart under the warm yellow glow of a desk lamp, and he looked so very much like Justin. Mary saw that photo. At last, she believed me. She jumped up and down in joy. She pulled her brother's hand and said, "I want to be a doctor when I grow up." The other children echoed her. "Me too. I want to save lives." I patted their heads and asked the boy who had been silent all this time, "And you, Jean? What do you want to be?" Jean glanced at the camera hanging on my chest, a little shy. "I want to be a journalist." I froze. "I want to be like you, to show the world the people who are suffering. If they can be seen, maybe someone will be willing to reach out and help." Holding back the urge to cry, I pulled them all into my arms. If Justin were still here, he would have been so happy. The seeds we had unknowingly planted were beginning to sprout. Before I left, I gave my compact camera to Jean, and Justin's stethoscope and books to Mary and the others. Their faces flushed with excitement. Even as the car drove away, they stood by the roadside, waving desperately, smiling so brightly, and I thought, maybe it was meaningful. After all, individual strength is small and cannot easily change the status quo, but it can ignite in others the anticipation of a future. These children, living in the depths of hardship, still long to lift up a beautiful tomorrow with their scarred bodies. Just as Justin once said, "Where there is anticipation, there is hope." Chapter 36. A few more months passed. My plan to find Justin's body yielded nothing. I went to that forest many times, but it had been night back then, and I had no idea which direction I had been running. In the end, I could only give up. I began sorting through old photos. Piece by piece, I recorded Justin's story on my Weibo. Many details, after 3 years, had already become blurry. At first, I only wanted to record them out of fear that, as time passed, I would forget even more. But unexpectedly, The posts went viral. Comments flooded in, all wanting to know more about his story. Someone wrote, "Our nation's farming roots are in our bones, wherever we go. We can always make a garden." Some of his former patients recognized him. Dr. Liu was truly wonderful. My mother was already a bit confused when she was sick. But every time he spoke to her, he was never impatient. He even performed magic tricks for my daughter once. But his supervisor thought he was gambling and scolded him harshly. From those comments, I pieced together what he had been like in the days before we ever met. Not long after, I received a video call from Sean. He had sent me a screenshot of my Weibo and asked, "Was that you?" I admitted it openly. Yes. He froze. His eyes filled with bitterness. "So the one you were talking about was my brother." "That's right. I should have realized sooner. No wonder you always looked at my face that way. I thought you truly loved me." His head dropped in despair. How is he now?" I hadn't yet written the later parts of the story. "So he didn't know." Coldly, I replied, "He's not fine. He's been dead for 3 years. The phone slipped from Sean's hand, crashing hard onto the ground. After a long pause, the image trembled back into focus. He was nearly falling apart. "He's dead? Why didn't I know? Why didn't you tell me? What do you think?" I sneered. "All these years, has anyone in your family ever cared about him?" Sean trembled violently, unable to meet my eyes. The first time I met Sean's parents, I had tentatively asked if he had any siblings. His parents had waved dismissively, no. But Sean had said, "I used to. But you should just consider him dead." When I asked what he meant, he had uncharacteristically smashed a bowl and warned me. "In this house, you are not allowed to mention him." He hated Justin, hated him for running away from home, for leaving him to become the new victim. His parents hated Justin even more, hated him for being their son yet beyond their control. So how could I possibly have told them? I lifted my head. "Don't shed your crocodile tears. Why do you think he ended up in a place like this? It was all because of you." Sean hung up in panic. Chapter 37. A few days later, Sean's parents came to me. They told me Sean was missing. Only then did I learn that on that day, Sean had stormed back home and smashed the entire place apart. He said everything was his parents' fault. If it hadn't been for them forcing Justin, he wouldn't have run off to the DRC, wouldn't have met me, and wouldn't have died. And Sean himself wouldn't have been so repressed that he mistook his feelings for love toward the unconventional Teresa, only to miss out on me. All of it, one thing chained to another. No solution. After that, he submitted his resignation to the hospital and disappeared. The two parents, already past middle age, sobbed so hard they could hardly breathe. "Lydia, how can this be blamed on us? As parents, we only wanted our son to bring honor to the family. Is that wrong? If only he had obediently stayed at the hospital as we told him." He refused. And look, now he's gone. Wasn't that his own fault? How could Sean throw a tantrum with us over something like this? No matter what, we are still his parents. Please, we beg you, bring him back to us. We've already lost one son. We can't lose the other. I lost all patience and hurled the phone down. Get lost. You are not worthy of being parents. My mood was in ruins. I wandered aimlessly, only to return once more to that forest. Sitting beneath a tall tree, I watched the mottled sunlight scatter across the ground. I hugged my knees tightly. Although Justin had only opened up to me once, I could already guess how much he had suffered at home. In the Doctors Without Borders forums, his emergency contact had first been his partner. Later, he had changed it to me. He didn't even want his family to know if something happened to him. And yet, from such a broken, wretched family, came someone as gentle, kind, and selfless as he was. Thinking of that, grief welled up in me once again. Chapter 38. A gust of wind blew through. A hard object fell from the tree above, striking me squarely on the forehead. I cried out in pain, sucking in sharp breaths. When I picked it up and looked, it was a name tag. In war zones, many carried these, so that in case of sudden death, they could still be identified. At first, I thought it had been left by some soldier, but when I turned it over, I saw the engraving, Justin. I leapt up instantly. I rubbed the letters over and over. How could this be? How could his name tag be here? Looking around, I noticed that the tree I was leaning against was different from the others. It was taller, its leaves wavy, deep green in color. The soil at its roots was darker than the rest. The longer I looked, the more I understood. Frantically, I began digging into the soil with my bare hands, until mud and blood filled the cracks of my nails. At last, a fragment of white bone appeared. In that moment, I broke down, wailing. I found tools. I dug out the remains, tangled in the roots of the tree. In the dirt were also the tattered fragments of the white coat he had worn that day. It was Justin. I had found him. I had finally found him. After his death, perhaps someone had hastily buried him there, and the name tag had, by chance, been enveloped by the tree as it grew, until it emerged again today. Today, as I sat beneath it, it fell, as if he had seen me grieving for him, and so he flicked my forehead with a playful snap, as if to say, cheer up. Don't waste your anger on people who don't deserve it. It's all in the past. Clutching his skull tightly, my voice shook as I whispered, all right, let's go home. We're going home. Chapter 39. I applied for leave, brought his ashes back home, and buried him beside my mother, since his real family did not want him. Then I would be his family. On the day of the burial, I saw Sean. He had lost a lot of weight, looking thin and frail. In his hands, he held 2 bouquets of white chrysanthemums. He placed them before my mother's and Justin's graves. He said he had finally figured everything out. He showed me a video of apology posted on WeChat Moments. It was from Teresa. She was apologizing to me and to others she had deceived. She confessed she had never gone traveling around the world, but had stayed in Beijing all along. She said she thought that this persona would keep Sean thinking about her. So she lied to everyone, and the reason she had lashed out at me was because she was jealous that I was truly about to marry Sean. After watching the video, Sean called Teresa right in front of me. Her tone was bitter and resentful. Sean, I've already apologized like you asked. I've been cursed at endlessly. Shouldn't you forgive me now? And what about what you said, that you'd marry me? You really will, right? Sean said coldly. No, I won't marry you. You lied to me, and I lied to you. We owe each other nothing. The only reason I made you apologize was because you hurt Lydia. From now on, we must never see each other again. He hung up, blocked her, then turned to me and said, about the camera, I'm sorry. I didn't know it was your mother's keepsake. I shook my head. You don't need to apologize, because I will never forgive you. The damage that cannot be undone has already been done. What use is a powerless apology? His face fell into shadow, and he said again, I also owe my brother an apology. When he first left, he reached out to me many times, but every time I blamed him, scolded him. Deep down, I knew it wasn't his fault that our parents forced me to break up with Teresa, but I didn't have the courage to run away. I was jealous of him. He stared blankly at Justin's tombstone. If I hadn't been such a coward, if I had gone with him back then, would I maybe have met you too, and at least had the chance to compete with him fairly? I replied indifferently. There is no medicine for regret in this world, and no point in what-ifs. The one I love is Justin, and that's all. He stood up and let out a soft sigh. Maybe one day, I'll join Doctors Without Borders too. I want to be a little closer to you, to make up for my regrets. I frowned. I was about to say do as you please. It's your own choice anyway. But suddenly I remembered. Someone once said that his younger brother didn't really want to be a doctor. He was thinking of you. You should really consider what kind of person you want to be. Don't let yourself end up with more regrets. Sean froze. It was as if he had fallen into memories of the past, his eyes turning completely red. I picked up the 2 bouquets of flowers. Neither of them liked white chrysanthemums. Don't bring them again. I tossed the flowers back to Sean and turned to leave. We were like 2 small boats swept along in a flood, after a brief moment sailing side by side. Our paths diverged, each carried away, in opposite directions. Chapter 40. As I walked out of the cemetery, I saw someone unexpected, my father. But on second thought, it wasn't surprising. Sean must have gone to see him. That's how he knew the camera was my mother's. so he also knew I had come back. He looked older. His back was hunched, trembling slightly in the wind, trying to sound ingratiating. He asked, "Have you eaten?" I cut straight to the point. "Say it. What do you want from me?" Uneasily, he rubbed his hands together. "Can you come home just once? I'm grown now. You told me never to come back, and I obeyed. I stayed away just as you wanted. So why do you want me back now?" "Your sister is sick. Cancer." For a moment, I was stunned. "I've run out of options. We've sold everything we could." "You're her sister. Can't you help her?" His face was full of sorrow. "I know you resent me, but back then, it wasn't that I wanted to drive you away. You're my daughter. How could I bear to? I had my reasons." "I know." He stared at me blankly. The day I received my admission letter, I had been overjoyed. At last, I could inherit my mother's will, study journalism, and become a reporter. I rushed home, eager to tell my father the good news. But what I heard was him and my stepmother quarreling in the kitchen. "In a few years, Luna will be going to college too. How could our family afford both? You've already raised her to adulthood. Isn't that kindness enough? Ignacio, think it through. This family can have her or me, not both." Quietly, I closed the door again. I ran to the street and sat there alone all afternoon. The entire summer, I lived in dread, waiting for the final verdict. When the reporting day came, my heart finally dropped and shattered completely. You didn't want the fragile home you had rebuilt to collapse again, so you chose to sacrifice me. Even if you couldn't bear it, you still drove me away. He tried to say more, but I cut him off. "I never hated you." I understood. But from a daughter's perspective, you weren't a terrible father. But you weren't a qualified one either. I picked up my phone and transferred 300,000 yuan to him. Over the years, he had sent me money now and then. I had saved it up, waiting for the right moment to return it. "The money you gave me, I've paid it back. The rest, take it as me repaying you for raising me. From now on, don't come to me again." Chapter 41. After leaving the restaurant, I suddenly felt an overwhelming lightness. All the burdens that had weighed on my heart for so long vanished into thin air. My steps turned, carrying me to the flower shop where Justin had once bought a bird of paradise for my mother. The shop owner recognized me, but the shop was nearly empty. She was loading the vacant flower pots onto a truck. I asked, "Are you moving?" She smiled, closing down. "I want to try something new." I froze for a moment. "That's good too." She wrapped up a bouquet of the remaining lilies of the valley, hyacinths, and olive branches, to wish us both a new life. We exchanged a hug, reluctantly parted ways. On the way home, the sky was painted with clouds glowing gold in the evening light. I paused to admire it. Then my phone rang. It was the station chief. His voice urgent. "Lydia, your vacation might have to end early." What happened? He sent me a news article. Israel-Lebanon conflict escalates. Pager explosions reported across Lebanon. The station thinks you're the most experienced for this. I cut him off. "I'll go." From beneath my collar, I pulled out the necklace engraved with Justin's name. I kissed it gently. I knew we would never have another answer, because wherever the smoke of war rises, that is where we must go. We will always hope that everyone in this world, no matter how deep the darkness, will still find starlight to guide them. Epilogue. Chapter 1. Lydia's Congo diary came to an end on the internet. Countless readers wept over Justin's fate. They went on their own to his grave to mourn him. Even his parents, who had never acknowledged him in life, appeared in the media, describing him as a kind and selfless man. But soon, netizens dug up their past actions. Public outrage erupted against them. Anonymous funeral wreaths piled up in the hallways outside their home. In the end, they moved away in the dead of night, humiliated, and no one knew where they went. Chapter 2. Justin was posthumously awarded the Nansen Refugee Award by the UNHCR, honoring his outstanding contributions in protecting and aiding refugees. Chapter 3. Sean never joined Doctors Without Borders. Instead, he took over the flower shop beside the cemetery. Lydia's words that day had stirred a childhood memory of playing in the yard with his brother in the mud. Back then, his brother had asked him what he wanted to do when he grew up. He had answered. Open a big flower shop. That memory had long been buried in the river of time. Every year, no matter how busy he was, Sean always took time to visit the cemetery. To honor his mother and Justin, that was the only day he could meet Lydia again. At all other times, he could only follow her footsteps from afar, scattered across the Middle East and Eastern Europe. Wherever war and flames spread, he counted the days with devotion, waiting for each chance to see her again, even though Lydia no longer cared about him at all. He felt that as long as he could still see her, it was enough. Chapter 4. Teresa's social life collapsed completely. Even her old friends cut ties with her, believing her to be full of lies and ill intentions. Desperate and with nowhere to turn, she sought out Sean, but she discovered that his eyes held only Lydia now. She had turned herself into a complete clown. Chapter 5. Lydia's half-sister died of illness 2 years later. Her stepmother had once cost Lydia her family, and now, she had lost her own daughter. She divorced Lydia's father. Ignacio's family was once again shattered. Only this time, he no longer had a daughter by his side. Not long afterward, he passed away. Chapter 6. Lydia continued to support the children they had once rescued. In the end, Ariel and Mary truly became a journalist and a doctor. Many years later, Lydia received the Pulitzer Prize for journalism. In her acceptance speech, she said, "If you cannot stop war, then tell the world its truth. Become the eyes of the world."